everyone. Welcome to the Plural Positivity World Conference. We are the Garden System, and we're going to be presenting Parenting as a Plural. I'd like to take just a moment to introduce ourselves. So we are the Garden System, and there are 11 parts. The three that will be speaking to you today are Leanna, Kilara, and Tiffany. A little bit of background information on us is we've worked professionally as a financial advisor for 5 years, and we spent 10 years in the education system working as a teacher and as a reading coach. And personally, I have 4 biological children who are ages 9 through 14. And we also do fostering. So we foster children in our home, and we have done that for the last 3 years. One question that keeps popping up in my Facebook groups and among other plural systems that I know is that they question whether or not they should have children at all. This is a very genuine, heartfelt question, as there's a lot of concerns about the ability to care for a very tiny human being that completely relies on you. You know, with the switching that happens, the amnesia that sometimes occurs when we're plural, you know, the question is can we really handle all of this? And those are great questions to have. And first and foremost, I want you to know that there are many, many plural systems out there that have children, and they're doing a fantastic job of taking care of their babies and their toddlers and their children and their teenagers and their adult children as they get older. Being plural doesn't mean that you can't have kids. You know, keep in mind that choosing to have a child is a very, very personal decision to make, whether you're plural or whether you're singleton. It's really your decision on whether or not to have children, and nobody should tell you yes or no. I didn't even know that I had dissociative identity disorder until after I had my kids. So the first question that we want to answer is when and how do we come out to our children as being a plural system? How do we let them know we've been diagnosed with DDNOS, OSDD, 1A, 1B, dissociative identity disorder? You know, how do we tell our family about this? It's a great question. And again, it's also going to be one that's very personal. There are many different ways that you can come out and let people know what's going on, and then there's some people who may not want to disclose at all. And so it's going to be up to you to decide when and how much you want them to know. But here's how it happened with us. So I received my diagnosis about a year ago from my therapist, and my daughter was 13 at the time. We'll call her Pink Tiger for right now. So Pink Tiger is 13 years old, and we are a homeschooling family. And so I set her to read a book called Soldier's Heart by Gary Paulson, which is about a soldier in the Civil War. And essentially, the soldier has PTSD. And so we go through the book and we look for the causes and the symptoms of the disorder for PTSD. And then I set her to write a research paper about PTSD. And it was through her research that she came across dissociative disorders and dissociative identity disorder. And then one day she came to me and she said, "Mom, do you have dissociative identity disorder?" And that was how she found out, because she recognized the symptoms in me from doing her research. So her and I had a conversation about dissociative identity disorder after that. And she was very accepting of the conversation that we had. And As we talked about it, her younger brothers and sisters picked up tidbits here and there, and they came to know and understand that this is, the way mommy is, and this is why mommy sometimes behaves this way, and why she sometimes behaves that way. And they love to ask, their favorite question to ask is, how old are you, mommy? And that's how it happened in my family. Your family may be a little bit different, and if you really want to let your family know and let your children know, even if they're a little bit younger, there's a great book out there that you can read with your kids that really helps explain what dissociative identity disorder is. It is called The Patchwork Quilt, and it is by J.D. Clark and illustrated by Megan Starling. And it is a beautiful story about a blanket and all the great things that the blanket did. And then one day, somebody bad cut up the blanket into all these little pieces. And then all the pieces had different purposes. But then one day the blanket comes back together and it becomes a patchwork quilt. So even though all the pieces are different and have different colors and different shapes and textures and things, they were still a blanket like they were in the beginning, even though they're a little bit different now. The story does not promote a particular type of healing process. It's very easy to interpretate integration when you're reading through the story, but that's not what it's trying to promote at all. It's just trying to promote that all of your parts can work together, and that they're all part of a whole. And that's really the truth, that we're all part of a whole. Our next question is about handling responsibility for the child as a group. And this is a great topic because it's a really important one. To take responsibility is a very, very challenging thing to do sometimes, especially when you've got many parts inside who don't always agree about what that really looks like. I think there's 3 important things that we need to do to handle the responsibility of having and caring for the child. The first one, I think, is it's important to have strong and healthy internal communication amongst all your parts. You need to be able to reach out and talk to everybody. You need to have other people be able to respond. People inside need to be able to get along to a certain degree. Otherwise, things are going to fall apart on you because not everyone's going to be on board with the responsibility. The most important thing to do is when you have that good internal communication going on is to set ownership. The kids are not just Tiffany's kids. The kids are not just Leanna's kids. The kids belong to all of us. All of us have the children. They all belong to all of us. It's very important that each of us sees ourselves as the mother to the child. We are all parts of the whole, and the children belong to the whole of us. So first, getting on board with everybody recognizing these are our children, which is a little tough to do when you have littles inside. I have a 3-year-old and I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they still have to see that these are our kids. And that's a little bit of a different view from their perspective. My littles often think of my children more like baby dolls, but she understands the concept that we are mom and we have to enforce the rules that we have put in place for our children. So she can't go, oh, I'm not sending anybody to bed because I want to stay up too. No, it's bedtime is 8:30 and you have to go to bed. So everybody has to be on board with what the rules are for the children, and that the children all belong to us, and that all of us have to enforce the rules that we put down for our kids. Having good rules and good boundaries for your children and what you expect of them is good parenting overall. Whether you're plural or singleton, there should be a list of rules and things that, this is bedtime, this is dinner time, you have to do this chore, all the things that everybody has to do as a parent still apply to us, even though we're plural, for all of us that are plural. And everybody has to be in agreement on what those rules are going to be. I have parts that don't care how late the kids stay up, and I have parts that are like, bedtime is at 8:30 and they're all going to bed. But we have to come to an agreement about what bedtime is. And so we had to compromise and say, okay, maybe 8:30 is a little early for bedtime. Bedtime will be 9:30 for the younger ones and 10 o'clock for the older ones. And so then we kind of went through that, and then more of us were agreeable to be able to enforce that rule as it comes to bedtime for us. But the most important thing is that all of us see the kids as ours. They all belong to us, and all of us are responsible for them. So each part has to take a sense of responsibility in the care for the children. And that leads up to the third thing that I think is important, and that is to have a plan. There should be a plan that includes your external support system, a plan that includes the internal support system, and then a plan that your kids would follow. Just like you might teach your kids to dial 911 in case of an emergency, what will the kids do if they notice that, mommy is not with us? You want to have a plan for the different scenarios that come about. So there should be, this is the plan, for regular activities. So this is how the day is supposed to go. But we need to also think of what emergencies might happen, and what will we do, So like, let's say we're out at the grocery store and suddenly mom is little, and mom is like, we're going to buy the Reese's Puffs cereal and the Trix cereal, and we're going to get some candy bars, and we're going to get some popcorn, and we're not buying any normal food. The kids might have to say, no, we can't buy candy, or no, we can't buy, we have to buy dinner. The kids have to know when to try and talk to your parts, when to access the adult parts of you when you're not doing well. And you might think that the kids would just go along and let the littles buy all the candy and everything, but I promise you they won't. This is exactly what I did with my daughter. We got to the grocery store and I looked at my daughter and I said, now, do not let my little buy a candy bar, because she's going to want one, but we're not buying candy bars today. And she says, okay. So we get in the store, and of course we're in Walmart, so we're going by the toy section. And I'm like, ooh, let's go look. And she took the cart and she said, no, Mom, we're here to buy food. Okay. And then we went, but the little said, okay, and then we went on. So there's a few things that your kids can do to help your system go in the right direction. They need to be aware of the plan. You tell them ahead of time, this is what the expectations are, and they can follow through. Having a plan for internal support. So let's say my little is out and it's time for bed, and none of the kids are listening to her, and she's going, you have to go to bed now, but all the kids know that I'm little, and they think, I don't have to listen to Mom because Mom is little right now. Well, if they're not listening to the little parts, the little parts have to know which adult part to go and fetch inside, which just comes back to having that good internal communication. Can they go find an adult part and help bring that adult part out to come out and say, I don't think so, you are going to bed now, or there will be consequences. So that's your internal support. Can the different parts go inside and find a part that can handle the situation when they're presented with something that's not working for them? And then your external support plan. So let's say that it's Saturday and mommy is not getting out of bed. Mommy is too sad to get out of bed, and mommy's not really with it. and nobody's watching the kids, and the kids want to be able to go outside and play, or they want to do this, or they're making a wreck of the house, and mommy hasn't gotten up and helped us with breakfast, mommy hasn't gotten up and helped us with lunch. What do we do? Your kids need to have like an emergency plan. They're not going to call 911 because mommy's still in bed. But who can they call? Do they have a list of your closest friends that know about your condition? And can they call some of those people? Or let's say your kids are really little and they don't have the ability to make a phone call. Do you have the ability to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I need help today. Can you come over today? And have a list, have a group of people that you can reach out to that will be able to come and help you when you're having those moments, because there's always moments where you start sliding out of reality and you can't get yourself grounded, and that the kids need someone to watch them, and I just can't do it today. So you've got to build the external support system and have friends who can jump in and be there. Hey, can you come and take the kids for an hour? And that will give yourself an hour to try and ground yourself and get an adult part to come out so that you can function the rest of the day with your kids. So it's very important to put a plan together on what you're going to do if different various situations occur. So think about what situations you might be in and which apply to you the most. Am I going to need help when we go out in public? Am I going to need help when I'm staying at home? Know what your triggers are and know what that might lead to, so that you can say, if this happens, we will do this. If I'm dissociating, I'm going to reach out to a friend. If the kids see I'm dissociating, they know to call so-and-so. Those are some of the different things that you can put in place to make sure that everybody is safe, and that's taking responsibility. It's not a shame to ask for help. It's not irresponsible to ask for help. It's not irresponsible to have somebody come in and take the kids for an hour or so while you get yourself together. It's actually the responsible thing to do. Even people who are not plural need to have a break once in a while. Even people who are not plural need to have external support as well. So don't feel ashamed by having the support system in place. This is what makes you a good parent, is by having everything in place for any situation that could occur. Just like when you teach your kid to dial 911 if there's an emergency, they know to do XYZ when mommy is dissociated or daddy is dissociated, or mommy or daddy is too little to do what they're supposed to do. Who do they call? Mommy is little and mommy's trying to cook. Mommy doesn't know what she's doing on the stove. Okay, that would be something for the kids to be able to reach out to somebody that they know and that that's safe, that can come over and be helpful and help you get grounded. And teaching your kids how to ground is a great tool, not only to have them help you, but even for themselves, to simply be grounded and be present in the current situation, be present in reality and what's actually going on. If they know how to ground, then they can say to mommy, what do you see? Mommy, what do you hear? Daddy, what do you smell? Daddy, what do you taste? Those are all great skills for anybody to have. And it'll teach your kids how to be grounded themselves as well, and it can help you too. When mommy is staring into space, I know I can ask mommy these questions. Or maybe I can have mommy play catch with me and throw a ball back and forth, until you feel like you're back in your body again. Grounding is a great technique to make you aware of what is happening here and now. And there's a lot of different activities that you can do that will ground yourself in the present. One of my favorite things to do is to take my feet and plant them firmly in the ground and then pretend I'm a tree and that roots are growing out of my feet and down into the ground and attaching themselves firmly to the earth. So I am now part of the earth. And that really brings you to the present, you know. Go outside and think about what you can see, feel, and hear while you're outside. Touch a tree, touch some plants, walk barefoot in the grass. All of those things can bring you back to the present so that you can function and handle the responsibility of taking care of the kids. Okay, kids, we're all going to go outside and we're going to walk barefoot in the grass. How happy would the kids be to do that? That's a very simple, easy thing that you can do to bring yourself back to the present. So, again, overall, handling the responsibility. Number one, strong, healthy internal communication between the parts. Number two, making sure everybody takes responsibility for the kids and sees the kids as, these are my kids. Taking ownership, they all belong to us. And then three, having plans in place with external support, internal support, and what will the kids do in a given situation. I'd also like to take a moment to add in the ownership piece is that your biological children need to take ownership that every part of you is mom or dad. Every part of you is the parent. Every part of you they have to listen to and they have to obey just as if it were one of your adult parts out. They have to recognize that everybody in the system is still mom or dad. It's still us. And if somebody little is trying to tell them what to do, they have to take that as, this is what mom wants us to do. We need to do it. So having the kids have the same ownership that all of the parts are our parents. All of these parts we need to listen to for our own safety. That would be very important to emphasize with your biological children as well. So we're on to the next question. So our next question is how to discipline and teach healthy coping skills to our kids. This is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. Discipline is a very important thing that you need to do for your kids because it teaches them responsibility and it makes them accountable for their actions. And there are so many different resources out there that talk about how to discipline your child that it might seem a little bit overwhelming as to know, where do I begin? Where do I start? There are a numerous number of books that you can read up on parenting that talks about how do you discipline your child. Disciplining your child when you're a plural is the same as disciplining your child when you're a singleton. Now, the main difference is making sure that you have that good internal communication and that everybody is on board with, these are the rules, these are my expectations, these are the consequences for if they follow the rule, these are the consequences if they don't follow the rule. And you need to, have everybody on board and be able to actually follow your own discipline plan. I'm going to recommend a book called Dare to Discipline by Dr. James Dobson. He's been married and has 2 children that he's raised, and he has made it his life's work to help parents effectively parent their children. He's also put out some books. So one's called Bringing Up Boys and another is called Bringing Up Girls. And those are, I think, really great books. I haven't read those 2 yet. They've been on my shelf waiting for me to get to. But the Dare to Discipline I've read multiple times before I had kids, when I had kids, and whenever I feel like I need a refresher on, the discipline. Sometimes I'm like, my discipline isn't really on track right now. I need a reminder of how I do this. So I think that, having those resources, having some books, There are many, many books out there that you can choose from. And, you know, the most important thing is you want to find a way to set clear expectations. You know, for example, you can't just say to the child, I want you to clean the kitchen, because they really don't know what that means. You have to have a list of expectations. A clean kitchen means you've cleared the table, you've washed the table, you have put all the dishes in the dishwasher, you put soap in the dishwasher, they've turned the dishwasher on. You want to have a series of steps that are very clear expectations for what does it mean. You know, what does get ready for bed mean? It means you put your dirty clothes in the hamper. It means you put on your pajamas. It means you brushed your teeth. It means you flossed your teeth. Those are the steps that you need to take, and that's what get ready for bed means. So you want to make sure you have very clear expectations for what you want the child to do. And then you want to make sure that you have consequences, whether they're positive consequences or negative consequences. You know, if you get ready for bed by 8 o'clock, then you can stay up until 8:45, 15 minutes past regular bedtime. But if you don't get ready for bed by 8 o'clock, you know, or I have to intervene, then you will have to go to bed at 8:30 instead. So there's a positive consequence and a negative consequence for following or not following the rule. But you want to keep them simple. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. But, you know, clear expectations and a consequence for what happens when that rule is followed or not followed. And the most important thing about disciplining your children is consistency. Whatever method you decide to use for their consequences, they need to be consistent. You need to mean what you say. You know, I used to say, if you don't behave, I'm going to make you sit out at your gymnastics class. Well, I started thinking, I'm paying for that gymnastics class. I really don't want her to sit out because I'm wasting my money. I'm not really going to enforce that. Well, so that's not a good consequence to use. You want to have fair consequences that you will continue to implement. You know, after gymnastics, we always stop at the little store and get a drink. Okay, if you didn't behave, you don't get your drink. You know, something that they receive or not receive based on the behavior. And you want to make sure that you follow through and actually do what you say you're going to do. You know, if you say, we won't go somewhere, then you can't go there. You have to mean what you say. It's very important to be consistent because kids know where the line is, and they will always drive you right to that line. And you want to make sure that line is firmly in place, because once they cross it, that's when the consequence happens. And you don't want to set that line to the point where you're ready to explode by the time they get to it. You want to have it set at an expectation where you know you can handle that degree of behavior. It's very important to follow the rules that you set forth. If bedtime is at 8:30, bedtime is at 8:30. And there's a consequence if they're not in bed by 8:31. So you want to make sure that you follow your own rules, that you stay consistent with them, and that whatever resource you choose to use for the discipline plan, that you have that readily available to go over and review and read as often as you feel necessary to do so. One of the reasons why I like the Dare to Discipline book is because it addresses abuse. And he talks about what is abuse and what is not abuse. So for those of us that have had trauma-filled childhoods where we didn't have a good expectation of or a good experience with our parents or our caregivers, and we didn't have that good foundation, and we don't know what is right and what is wrong, this book will clearly spell it out for you. It's abusive to do this. It's not abusive to do this. And I think that's really, really helpful for those of us with plural systems that it went through some traumatic childhood experiences. So that's why I really like that book. And he's very good at explaining how to set clear expectations and very good about the consequences and how to implement those on a consistent basis. Um, so that's the discipline side. For my kids, um, for my kids, they know what behaviors I will tolerate and what behaviors I will not tolerate. And they know when I'm giving them a warning, and they know when they've gone too far, and they know when to pull it back. One of my one of my most important to me disciplines is how my kids behave while we're at church. So we go to church 3 times a week, and I want to make sure that they don't disturb other people around them when they're at church. And so when it comes to disciplining them, it's not like I can be loud as well, because then I would be disrupting everybody. So I have some different signals and things that I might use. So I might put my finger to my lips. You know, they're talking. You're not supposed to be talking right now. I've even used this, you know, where you need to close your mouth. So those are some things that I do with my kids, is I have little signs that I will give them, you know, having that look, that parent look, you know, where don't do that, you know, you have that expression, but your kids are used to that. So that's what I do with my kids, is I have different, you know, looks that I will give them. I have different signs that I will give them. And I do counting. Not everybody does counting, and some people argue against it, but I found that it works really easy for me to help, because my kids are also autistic, and so that's a whole nother component to think about when you're doing discipline with your kids, and I do counting. If it's something I want them to do and they're not doing it, I'll go 3, 2, 1, and they better be in line by 1, or they're going to have a consequence. Or another thing is like I want them to accomplish a task, and they have a hard time with time management, and they don't know that it really shouldn't take you 30 minutes to put your clothes in the hamper. So I'll give them, okay, you have 10 seconds to put your clothes in the hamper, and I will count backwards, 10, 9, 8, and so on down, and they know that they have to complete that task by the time I get to 0. So those are some different, that's another technique that you can use to get them moving and doing what they're supposed to be doing, is setting timers. You know, I want you to clean the kitchen. It should take you maybe 20 minutes to clear the table, rinse the dishes off, and put them in the dishwasher. So we'll set the timer for 20 minutes. When the bell goes off, the job needs to be done. Otherwise, there's a consequence. So that kind of curbs the bathroom trips and the I got to do this and all the distractions that come in place, because it narrows it down. I'm going to be focused for this length of time to do this activity. Some of the things that I do, some of the consequences that I have, taking away electronics, taking away outside time, having a timeout. They have to go sit on their bed, and they're not allowed to pitch a fit in the bedroom. If they pitch a fit in the bedroom, then I will bring them out, and I will have them stand like on the wall, kind of, or like, because nobody has corners anymore. Our corners are all filled with stuff, but you know, stand in the corner type thing. You just stand on the wall right here where I can see you, and you're not allowed to pitch a fit and scream, and you'll stand there until I'm satisfied. I had a coworker. She would make her kids stand in one of the tile squares, and they had to stay inside the tile square until their behavior was, you know, drawn back. But I think some of the best things that you can do with your kids as far as discipline is actually teaching them healthy coping skills. Just like what we learn in our therapy. Take what you learn in therapy with your therapist and apply it with your kids. One of the techniques is called color breathing. A lot of times what I would do if the kids were getting too rowdy, rambunctious, and it was just way over the top and I couldn't get them to settle down, is I would make everybody lay on the floor on their backs, and I would put on a meditation, and I'd make them listen to the meditation, and then we would do a breathing exercise. And one of my favorite breathing exercises is one that my therapist did with me, and it's called color breathing. And so with color breathing, you picture you taking in a deep breath, but the air has a color to it. And it could be whatever color you choose it to be, and that color goes inside. It could fill you up. It could go to a certain part of you. Like, let's say your child is feeling really angry, and I feel angry in my fists. Okay, so we're going to lay down and relax. We're going to breathe in a color. That color is red. And I'm going to picture the red going into my fists. And then I'm going to breathe out, and all of that color is going to come out as you exhale. So the anger is leaving my fists. So it's a breathing exercise that you can use to bring things in and get things back out again. Another good one, which I talked about earlier in the previous question, is grounding. Planting your feet on the ground and having roots grow into the earth like you are a tree. Looking around and using your five senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I taste, smell, and so on. Feeling things, going outside and actually touching things, walking barefoot on the ground, tossing a ball back and forth. Those are all things you can use to make yourself present and grounded. And, I think it's good for kids to be able to just take it down, sit down, and take notice of what's going on around them. This would be a great way to kind of introduce personal space. What do you see around you? And how far are you away from it? All those different things can be used to help your kids ground. Another one that I absolutely love is the Labyrinth. If you Google finger labyrinth and look at the images, you will have all these beautiful labyrinths come up that you can print out and you can use with your kids. A labyrinth is different from a maze because there's only one way in and one way out. You don't find your way through it. You go in until you get to and then you come out, the same way that you came in. And this is a little labyrinth that I made with melty beads, and it's kind of probably really hard to see how it works. And I have to use a pencil to actually use this labyrinth because it's so close together. But the ones that you print out will be larger, and you can do things like use yarn or puff paint or any kind of sensory item to kind of outline it so that you feel something as your finger is running through it. So you would go up and follow it around and just kind of follow it until you get to the center. And you can do this as slow or as fast as appeals to you until you get to the center, and then you come back out again. And one of the great things about using the labyrinth is you can tell your story through it. So you can hand this to your child and say, okay, you're really angry right now. Let's talk about why you're angry. And so the kid would start at the starting point and go, I feel angry because, and then they start telling it. And so now they're talking kind of to the labyrinth as they work their way through it till they get to the center. And you'll get to hear the story of why they're angry, and you'll get to understand where they're coming from so that you can impose the appropriate consequence for them. And remember, consequences can be positive or they can be negative. So depending on what happens, maybe you have multiple children. Okay, everyone's going to go through the labyrinth, and they're going to explain why they're angry. Why are you fighting with your siblings? And then you'll get the whole story, and you'll be able to make a wise decision on how to handle the situation. So that's the finger labyrinth, and I'll put it up real close so you can kind of see how you go around and get to the center. And then you come back out again, and mine's the cat got a hold of it, so it's a little unglued at the moment. But you just kind of follow this blue line here up and around and all the way around around until you get to the center, and then you come back out again, and you follow it back out the way that you came in. So it's very calming and very effective. I used this with a foster daughter that I had for a long time, and she absolutely loved using Labyrinth. Whenever she was sad, mad, angry, glad, she would run to get this and follow it along, and I'd listen to her as she went through the Labyrinth and explained her story. So the Labyrinth is a great tool to use with your kids. Sometimes you're going to encounter moments when the children have a difficult time talking. You might ask them a question, might ask them how they're feeling, and they don't have an answer for you. And I find that this happens a lot to me in therapy. So how was your day today, Tiffany? It was fine. Well, what happened? Good stuff. Do I have to drag it out of you, Tiffany? Yes, you do. Because I just can't talk. And I think many of us can relate to that in some extent, the overwhelming feeling of I'm not really able to speak, or I really have no words to describe what it is I'm feeling inside. And that happens to our kids a lot too. As they're growing and developing, they don't always have the right words to explain what's going on inside their head or what they're feeling inside themselves. And so one way that you can work with your kids to teach them how to express their emotions is through pictures. I see that you're feeling really angry right now, or I see that you're feeling really sad right now. What does that look like to you? And then you can make collages. You can get some magazines and let the kids cut it out and paste different pictures together to represent what's going on inside, what's going on in your head, and they can create these beautiful collages. You can also do it on the internet if you supervise, and they look up images, images at google.com, and they type in, what they're looking for. If they type in the word sad and just look at all the images that mean sad, they can kind of pick what they're feeling and what's going on, and they can put a little collage together that will give you a better idea of what's happening inside. Because as much as we would like to, we can't read minds, and we can't read our kids' minds to know exactly what's happening. So these are some ways they can express themselves, to kind of show those different emotions and show those struggles and really show how they're feeling. Why did you hit your sister on the head? I don't know. They don't know. They have no idea. So the best way to go with that is to take some pictures and let them put something together. So those would be the collages. One more thing that I have used, and I actually used this when I was a teacher, and I taught middle school language arts and reading. And there's a lot that is going on in the classroom. Just like if you have lots of kids, there's a lot happening in your household. Even if you only have one kid, there's still a lot happening in your household. And this exercise I'm about to describe is really for kids who are old enough to read and write. And this is what I call the ticket warning. So if I see some misbehavior happening, instead of engaging the student, engaging the child in the situation or the behavior, I would give them a piece of paper. And then I would continue on with what I was doing. And that piece of paper is like, I think of it like how the police give you a warning ticket when you've done something wrong. They get this piece of paper and they know the teacher's not happy, mom's not happy, dad's not happy. I'm doing something that they think is wrong. And then on that piece of paper, they write out what they were doing, what was going on. They get to fill out their side of the story, and they write it all out for you. So instead of having an engaging argument about what's happening or why they did this or how I'm misinterpreting it, they get to write their full side of the story, which then later I get to read, and then I can make a decision on what the consequence is for whatever behavior was happening. So it keeps things calm, and prevents them from escalating into a fighting, screaming match with your child. Because everything is written down, and then you can be cool, calm, and collected when you go back to read it and you're not in that intense situation trying to engage your child. So that's a tip for older kids. If the kids are too young to write, then that's when the timeout really comes in handy. Okay, have a special chair that they have to sit in, and once you're calmed down, then you can go back to the child and have a conversation with them and implement what your consequences are. you know um, you know sorry you had to sit in this chair for 5 minutes, but you're not allowed to lay on the floor and kick and scream, so you're not going to have any dessert after supper tonight. Okay, that's an example of how you can deliver a consequence for somebody who's younger and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Or they you put them in the chair when they do something wrong. Like, for example, let's say they were throwing their toys and they're not allowed to throw their toys. You put them in the chair. You let them sit there for a few minutes, get yourself to a very calm state. You are not allowed to throw your toys, therefore the toy is going to go into storage for a week. That could be something that you could do as well. That would be very similar to the ticket. Is giving them just some time by themselves, to think about what's happening. Maybe you could have them draw a picture of what they did wrong. If they can't write the words, then they can make a picture of what went wrong there. So those are some different discipline and strategies and different ways you can use healthy coping skills, because it allows them to process what has happened and what's going on, and allows them to understand the reasons for the consequences and why they're having those consequences. It's important that they understand why they earned something or why that something was taken away. So you want to have that understanding on both sides. So that's what I have to say for discipline and healthy coping skills. If you have any questions, you can feel free to send them my way, and I'll do my best to answer them. And we're going to move on to our next question for our series. There are many issues that those of us who are plural and have plural systems face when we're trying to parent. Out of all the different issues that there could be, I want to focus on 3 that I think are the most common and the most important to think about. Number 1 is dealing with amnesia. Many of us with our parts have amnesia between those different parts. It's like there's a wall that's up, and this part doesn't know what this part's doing. So this part can ground the kids because they broke something expensive, and this part doesn't know they're grounded and lets them go outside and play anyway. Those can be some problems that we have. Right along with that is also losing time. So we have a stretch of time where we're not sure where we were, what we were doing, or what happened during that time. It might be a span of a few minutes. It might be an hour or more. I often find that I struggle with losing time during the bedtime routine, simply because that's when my littlest likes to come out, and who knows what she does when she's out. And then we come back to, and it's 10:30 at night, and nobody's in bed yet. So, and you're like, what happened during these last 2 hours that nobody's ready for bed? So that's another issue that we face, is losing time and not keeping track of the schedule that we have the kids on. And then the third thing is when your littles try to parent your kids. Now, I spoke earlier about how all of the parts need to come together and recognize that the kids belong to each other, that they are from this body, and that we, as a team, everybody inside the team is the parent and needs to help take care of the children. And on the flip side, the kids are supposed to agree that no matter who is out, it's still the parent, and they need to obey and follow the directions of the parent, no matter who is out. But that doesn't always work because kids can't raise kids. So the littles really cannot hold that parent authoritarian figure over your children. They'll try. Like my little tries to tell them to go brush their teeth and it's time to go to bed, but they don't really they don't really get listened to. They don't have that authoritarian voice that causes the children to obey when you speak. So it's important that when the littlest one realizes that the kids are not listening, that she needs to go get an adult part to come out and make the kids do what they're supposed to do. She can't hog the out time. She needs to go back in and let someone come out and take care of the kids. The amnesia is really tricky. One of the ways that we deal with the amnesia part is we just have a really good schedule and a really good calendar. I've got a couple whiteboards that have a weekly calendar and then a monthly calendar, and everything is recorded on these calendars, especially all of our doctor's appointments, all the kids' doctor's appointments, where we're supposed to be, what night they have their sports activity. That all goes on the calendar. We put everything on there, right down to the birthdays and vacation times and everything that we're going to be doing. That way, no matter who is out, they can look at the calendar and go, oh, my child is supposed to go to gymnastics tonight. Let's load up. We have to go to gymnastics. Now they know, and you don't forget all the time. Because that happens a lot, and you pay good money for those sports activities. They're not cheap, and you don't want to miss any practices. So you want to make sure you remember to go to all of them. So the calendar really, really helps keep everybody on track with what we're supposed to be doing and when we're supposed to be doing it, so that we don't forget the important things that we're supposed to do. Another thing that you can do is if the kids are in trouble and they're grounded for a certain number of days, mark it on the calendar. It's a good countdown for the kids to see how long they're grounded for and when they will not be grounded. You know, and if they're bugging you, am I still grounded? Am I still grounded? Go look at the calendar. It's right there for all of us to see. And as far as losing time, the best exercise is grounding. You know, to stay in the here and now in the present. Grounding can be done a number of ways, which I've talked previously about before. But really just being involved and paying attention to what your kids are doing. You know, don't just send them off to go get ready for bed and then do your own thing, because that's when you're going to lose time. You know, but to go in there and, okay, are you putting your pajamas on? What pajamas are you putting on? And then focusing on what's actually happening. Notice the colors, notice the smells, notice what you hear as you're going through the process. Do you hear them getting ready for bed? Do you see them putting pajamas on? Do you smell the toothpaste and the mouthwash? Those are different things that you can do throughout that process. And if there's a different time of day with a different activity that you're trying to stay focused on and not lose time, just find the things that you see and hear and smell and taste and things you can touch and feel in that particular moment to try and keep yourself there and grounded. Sometimes taking off your shoes and feeling the floors with your bare feet really helps. I am here. This is where my feet are, and I'm going to picture roots growing down into the earth. I am here on this planet, and I am present with what's happening. Just really taking time to stay focused on that. You know, and asking the parts inside, can you wait till we're done with this activity? We want to finish the bedtime routine. We want to finish getting ready for school. And then somebody else can come out. So those are some things that I think are big issues. If you have any other questions about issues, you can type in the chat box and we will respond with what examples that we have for you. So thank you very much, and now it's time for the next question. So how do you deal with your littles and your children? This is a great question, and I think there's a lot of balance that needs to happen as we explore this topic. And it's going to be important to draw some good, healthy boundaries to make sure that everything runs smoothly within your household. Um, for us, we typically just kind of roll with it. We go with the flow. We don't try to force a change. We don't try to stop a change. We don't try to fight it. Whoever comes out comes out, and they deal with the situation as is present. I think that it's a very natural way to handle it, and I think that it will be less stressful for the children to just see the seamless flow and change instead of the constant battling going back and forth when it comes to trying to fight or force a particular change. We just kind of go with the flow. When the littles come out, that's when the littles come out. We think that it's okay to play. It's great. You got kids that need a lot of time and attention, and they want to do things like play games with you, and you've got all these little parts inside that love to play these games too. They're all part of you. They all make up the whole. Everyone is viewed as the parent. All of our parts, are part of us, and them spending time with your children is a wonderful thing, in my opinion. So it's okay to play. It's okay to have them talk. It's okay to have them come out. I don't think there's any reason to hide what's going on. Just make it seem natural. Don't act like it's a big weird thing. Oh, it's just so and so is out right now, and so wants to play with you right now. And I think kids are very, easygoing, and they can roll with the punches, and they can just dive right in and be like, oh, okay, this is great. The balance that we want to have, though, is we want to make sure that everyone is still viewed as the parent, and that the littles don't try to raise the kids all by themselves. It's important that the children view all of your parts as you, as the parent, no matter who is out. This is who's in charge, and this is who I listen to at this particular time. But the little kids, the littles inside need to know when to get adult parts to help with the children outside, because the children outside still need to do things like take a bath and brush their teeth and floss their teeth and do their homework. And it's important that they have structure in their lives, and littles are not going to be able to provide all of that. They're going to be able to provide some fun interaction that can build some bonding and form some friendships and some strong ties together. But ultimately, we have to be the parent. And so the adult parts or other parts inside that can handle the responsibilities need to be able to step forward when the time arises. So on to our next important topic. How do you set healthy boundaries between all of your parts and your children? How do you maintain those healthy boundaries between you and your kids? What a great question, because healthy boundaries are something that we need with everybody that we encounter. And they are just as important to have with our children as well. Healthy boundaries make good relationships. Healthy boundaries keeps everyone in check, so that you can maintain that role as I am the parent. We are the parent in this situation. Some tips and ideas are to first define some roles and who's going to be in charge of them. Those roles could be like the nurturer or the disciplinarian, the homework helper, the person who's kind of the babysitter, somebody who can watch the kids but maybe necessarily doesn't always act as the nurturing mom part. You might have different parts that can fill different roles that you have with your children. So I would think about what kind of roles do you want your parts to play when they interact with your children. And then they kind of stick to that role. during those interactions. I think it's important to also set a list of rules. Some examples might be all your parts, especially your teenage parts, middle parts, and little parts, have to follow the same rules as your children do. If you're not allowed to make phone calls after 9 p.m., then you don't make phone calls after 9 p.m., and that applies to everybody. So that way, when the adult parts are inside and the little parts are out, they're going to have to follow the same rules as your children do. And that kind of helps maintain some structure going on. Another rule you might want to set in place is no secret keeping. It's great to have your different parts interact with your kids and to build those relationships, but they shouldn't be keeping secrets like their best friends from the adult parts who are the parent, because remember, everybody is the parent. You might want to say, okay, there are certain things that we don't have to tell, but certain things that we do have to tell. And maybe it could be something like how it is with a therapist. What is said in that room stays in that room unless you're in danger. And so you might have to qualify what in danger means to your parts to say when to tell and when not to tell. Because you don't want your parts tattling either, because that will be annoying too. Just like when kids tattle, you don't want your parts tattling. But there shouldn't be any secrets that are kept from other parts, because everybody has to work together as a whole. Everybody has to work together as the parent, and they can't parent properly if they don't know what's going on. So those might be some important rules that you would want to share with everybody and with your kids, that this is what we're going to follow. This is what you can expect. You know, just set up those guardrails and then live by them. And you have to decide where that boundary line lies. How close do you want your parts to get with your kids? How much do you want them to share? And you need to define that, just like you would do with any relationship. So define your roles: nurturer, disciplinarian, babysitter, maybe like an admin person who takes care of all the appointments and all the places the kids need to be. And then have some rules that everybody has to follow when it comes to the children. So now we're on to the challenges and triggers that are caused by our kids sometimes through their different ages and stages of development. I want to start off by saying this: triggers are inevitable. There's going to be triggers. They will trigger you. It's expected. So we know it's coming, so we can then prepare for them. That's the best way to start overcoming them, is to try and think, what will trigger me? Will it be triggering for my child to touch me, to give me a hug without asking? Will it be triggering for my child to make loud noises? You know, think of what your triggers are and how your kids might accidentally do that to you. And then you can come up with a plan to kind of make them not as triggering. And this just comes in handy with all the coping skills that you have learned through therapy or online or wherever you've done your research. And what I would encourage everybody to do is I would encourage everybody to take inventory of your skills. Get out a piece of paper, write them down, make a list of the things that you can do to help yourself when you're triggered. And then constantly keep that paper with you. Put it in your pocket, put it in your purse, put it in your wallet. Put it wherever you're going to be so that it is always with you, so that when something happens, because when you're triggered, you don't always remember what your coping skills are. You pull out the paper and go, oh, I can do this. And then you can start implementing your different coping skills that you have, whether it's counting or breathing, taking a time out. All of those things are great Part of coping skills is grounding. How can I ground? Grounding is a coping skill, and what are the ways that I like to ground? Do I like to picture myself as a tree? Do I like to feel and touch different objects? Do I like to look at what I see, what I hear, what I smell, what I taste, using your senses? Those are some different things that you can do to help yourself cope when a trigger happens. So the best thing to do is to realize and recognize triggers are going to happen. I'm going to be prepared to do some coping skills when they happen, and I've got my list of coping skills on hand and ready, so I can find an appropriate one to use given the situation I'm currently in. And the most important thing that you can do during this time is to allow room for forgiveness. Forgive yourself, because nobody is perfect. Things are going to happen. You're going to have to deal with them. Your kids are going to have to deal with them. But it's not the end of the world if you get triggered and you struggle to cope with that particular trigger. You will not ruin your children. It's okay not to be perfect. Children are very forgiving, and they're very understanding, and they're very sympathetic. This would be a great time to incorporate teaching your children as well as helping yourself. We don't give hugs unless we ask permission first. That's a great rule to have, even with family members. And then they'll carry that rule on, to other people that they don't know as well. Oh, I can't just run up to a stranger and hug them. Sometimes kids need to be taught that. And if they learn it first with you, then they'll carry it on to other areas of their life. It's a great opportunity to teach your children how to be forgiving and how to accept an apology. I'm sorry that mommy, didn't handle that very well. Can you forgive me? Yes, I accept your apology. So those are some things that you can do, even if it doesn't work out perfectly, to bring it in and make it okay again. So be prepared for your triggers, take inventory of your coping skills, and then remember to forgive yourself. It's okay to not be perfect. So now I'd like to talk about the different challenges that we may face at the different ages and stages of development. The most stressing stage for us was when our children went through the potty training phase. We found a lot of aspects of potty training to be very triggering for us in our system. And we didn't do well with potty training. Now, it does help me a little to know that we did discover that the first two children had kidney reflux, which was the cause for some of the issues with getting them trained. But it was a very difficult thing to train them to use the potty. And it just exasperated me to no end. And I would get frustrated, and then my protector parts would want to come out because they knew the system wasn't overwhelmed and they knew that we needed help. And those were some very angry parts. And we didn't need very angry parts to come out when we're trying to train our children how to use the potty. So that could be one that you want to prepare for and think, how am I going to handle potty training? It's a difficult thing to do as it is, and then add us being plural on top of it, it just makes it that much harder. My third daughter, she trained herself, thank goodness, because I was too busy with trying to get the first two trained, and so she just kind of, mimicked everything they did, and she kind of just did it herself. I wasn't even going to try with her, but she took her own diapers off and went herself and took care of it herself. So that was kind of a blessing for me. And then with my son, I didn't even try. I sent him to preschool, and I let his preschool teacher do all the training. That was the best solution for us. So if you can afford daycare preschool, most kids are already in daycare preschool, let the teacher handle the training, because they're very good at it, and they do it with lots of kids all the time. So they're experienced in this department. The next challenge that we faced was when our kids would do something wrong, like when they would tell a lie, or when they stole something from the store, or when they would become too angry and they would lash out. then all the inner critic voices would start coming down on me, and that was a huge trigger. You're not a good mom. You're ruining your kids. They're going to grow up to be terrible people. All these different thoughts were racing through my mind whenever the kids did something that they weren't supposed to do. And that was very triggering because I really valued, being a parent and valued raising kids up a certain way. And when they didn't conform, it was very distressing to our system. So what you're going to have to do is remember is that all kids are going to do things they're not supposed to do. We all commit acts that we're not supposed to do. Lying, maybe stealing, being, overly jealous, becoming angry, and doing things out of anger that we shouldn't do. That's, a human tendency that we all fall prey to. And that's what you have to remind yourself, is that it's not abnormal behavior, and the child will learn from their experiences, and these are your teaching moments to teach them the values that you want instilled inside your children. No, we're not going to lie. No, we can't take things that don't belong to us. No, we can't punch the wall when we're angry. All of those things are things that you can start teaching your children, and you can let them know how upsetting it is. Be willing to share. It really hurts, Mommy, when you do these things, because you shouldn't be doing them. And teaching them this is the right thing to do. This is what I want you to do. This is the kind of person I want you to be. One of the phrases I used to use with my children is, you are too beautiful to act this ugly. And that really put things into perspective. Reminding the child that they are a good person, they are a beautiful person, they have a beautiful spirit, and a beautiful soul, and that people who are beautiful don't do things that are ugly, like lying and stealing and cheating and throwing angry temper tantrums. The stage we're in now, the challenge that we're currently facing, is adolescence. And I sometimes wonder if I'm going to survive this phase. The first problem is when they have an attitude. I want to say, when did you get an opinion? But we have to remember that our children are not extensions of us. They're their own person with their own ideas and thoughts and beliefs and behaviors. And we have to remember that. And we also have to teach them how to be respectful and how to express those ideas in a dignified manner, in a respectful way. And typically, when someone backtalks me, that's when my protector comes out, and they are ready to just roar at what's going on, because you're not going to talk to me like that. So that's the challenge that we have, is making sure that we keep our own selves in check and that we don't become overly angry when we're dealing with their attitudes. The other thing that might be a big trigger is, this is the time where kids start puberty and they start becoming a man or a woman. They start becoming an adult, and their bodies are going through all sorts of changes at this time. Now, I don't recommend that you lead the sexual education just to the school system, because you want to teach them your values and your beliefs when it comes to this topic. And they should hear it from you. And that can be a very triggering thing to talk about. And you can also use that teaching moment as you're going over it with your kids to explain what's right and what's wrong with these behaviors and what they can do to people. If these things are done in an inappropriate way, this leads to trauma, this leads to dissociation, this leads to people having parts. And so you can kind of take ownership of that and teach them. And that way we're also teaching our next generation about dissociation, about what it means to be plural. And we can start setting up some preventatives to avoid trauma. So those are my thoughts on those challenges. Those are the challenges we have faced so far. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So now we're on to our last question. So, how do you parent children if you didn't have good examples of parents while you were growing up? How are you supposed to know what to do? How are you supposed to know how to handle your child if nobody handled you correctly as a child? That's a great challenge that we have, because most of us come from trauma and we didn't have great childhoods growing up. So if this is you, what do you do? It's a great question. I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to find good examples of good parents. How do you do that when you're all grown up? Look at your friends. Look at how they're parenting. Discern what they're doing to determine if you think that's good parenting or if that's bad parenting. And take what you can glean what you can from the good parenting. You might have extended family members that are good parents. Maybe they just didn't live close by you. Connect with the people who are good in your life and seek out those that might be good examples for you. Another way you can find some other good parents is make sure you take your kids to lots of activities. There's activities even for babies, little mommy and me gymnastics classes, mommy and me music lessons, baby and me music lessons. There's all sorts of activities for every age group, even newborns and up. Get involved with that activity and get to know the other parents that are there. And watch how they handle their kids and look at how they deal with the different situations that arise. And you're going to find some great parenting examples and some really terrible parenting examples, and you need to learn to discern what is good for the kid. What is a great way to handle that situation? This is what this mom did and it didn't seem to work out too well, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Or this is what this mom did and her kid was fine. I should remember to do that. I can remember back when I was a teenager and I was learning how to deal with kids as a babysitter, and I had wanted to become a teacher for a while. So I spent a lot of time working with kids. But this particular time I was in the grocery store and I was sitting on the bench by the door and where the people were cashing out because I was waiting on my mom. And in line there was this woman and this little girl. And the little girl wanted to buy a little piece of candy. And mom said, "You have to be a good girl to get the candy." And she started screaming, "I am good, I am good." And mom was fussing at her for having a meltdown in the middle of the store. It was very hard to discern what she was actually saying, very hard to hear the words, "But I'm a good girl, I am good," coming out of her mouth because she was screaming and wailing so much. And it hit me that this little girl got the impression that she was not good. So it's really important to think about the words that we use with our kids, and attach that good or bad to an action as opposed to self. So that, looking around in public, you're going to see many examples of how parents handle their children. The grocery store is full of people disciplining and handling their children, and you'll get to see firsthand how those situations are handled. So seek it out. Look for parenting examples everywhere you go, whether you be in the mall or in the store, whether you're out at an activity that's geared towards children and you've got your child involved in that activity. When you're going out with your friends and your friends have their kids along, how do they handle their children? Listen to the stories that they tell and what they do. Those are some great ways to seek out good parenting advice. The second thing that I think is important to do is to utilize all your resources. There are many books and there are many videos about parenting. Go to your local library and check out some books. Go to the bookstore and buy some books. Find those videos. Look for those tips. They had a show, the Nanny, which this British nanny would go into these homes and she would show the parents how to discipline their children. Watch a few of those episodes because she has some great ideas of how to handle different situations. Another resource that we have is there are parenting classes everywhere. So sign up for a parenting class. A lot of these are usually through a church group, and some of them might be through the state. But there's different resources out there that have classes that you can attend to learn more about parenting. Even attending a simple babysitting class would give you a lot of resources and skills to handle kids in different situations. And then find some support groups, some meetups. There's all sorts of different meetups for different types of parents, whether you're a free-ranging parent or whether you're more of a helicopter type parent. Or I'm a stay-at-home mom parent, or I'm a working mom parent, stay-at-home dad, working dad. All of those they have all sorts of groups for all these different categories, and you can find one that matches your style and what you're doing. We joined groups for homeschooling families because we homeschool our children. We like the Montessori method of teaching, so we got involved in different Montessori groups. My kids did gymnastics, they did music lessons, they did cheerleading, they did football, they did dance, and they participated in all these different things. And that's where we learned a lot of our parenting skills, is through these different classes and activities. And then the third thing, one thing you can do is, if you haven't really had any good examples, or you haven't been finding good examples, is do the opposite of what you have seen and heard and learned. Think about, what was it that I craved as a child? I craved love or safety. I craved food. I craved shelter. The different things that were neglected in your life. Make sure that you are providing. How can I show my kid that I love them? Does my children like lots of affection? Do my children like me to do lots of things for them? What ways can I express the love and show my kids that I love and treasure them? If you had a lot of yelling growing up and you couldn't stand the yelling, and I can't handle yelling today, then that's something you're going to want to try to avoid as you parent your own children. I need to come up with a way where I don't yell. What can I do to prevent myself from becoming too angry and yelling a lot? And there's your coping skills. I got to take mommy needs a time out. And it's okay for mommies to take times out, or daddies take time outs. Everyone can take a time out. Take a time out, and then come back to the situation, do your coping skills, your breathing exercises, or any other skills that you use to get yourself calm, and then come back. The reason that most kids get sent to their room before punishment is given is so it gives parents time to cool down. You don't want to react out of anger, so you want to make sure that you control yourself. Think of the things that scared you as a child, and then say, okay, I'm not going to do these things. I'm going to replace them with these things. And most importantly is we all have an innate ability to parent. We have instincts inside of us that tell us what is good and what is bad. And don't be afraid to trust yourself. Instinctively, you do know what to do. Instinctively, you are prepared to be a good parent, despite the experiences you might have felt. Learn to trust yourself and learn to trust your judgment calls when it comes to handling your children. So this brings us to the end of my presentation. It was my intention and hope that I was as inclusive as possible to include everybody, and that I was able to provide some benefits to you and some takeaways that you can have to better help you as a parent. I hope all the sessions in this conference are beneficial to you. I've made some recommendations throughout the presentation, and I just want to say that I was not paid or sponsored to make those recommendations. They're just recommendations I made out of my own free will from my own experiences. So I had recommended the book The Patchwork Quilt, and I had recommended the book Dare to Discipline by Dr. James Dobson. Those are the two recommendations that I gave throughout this presentation. So I want to thank you all for participating in my session, and I hope that you get something out of it, and I hope that everything was very helpful and beneficial to you. It was not my intention to offend anyone throughout the presentation. If I did do or say something offensive, I do apologize for that. It was done out of ignorance if there was anything. But I'm very grateful that I was given the opportunity to speak, and I'm very happy to have all of you here today. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel and comment there as you like. I'm going to be reposting this entire presentation on my YouTube channel later for you guys to view as often as you like, or you can, scroll through it or fast forward and rewind to get the parts that you want or need. So thank you again, and have a great conference.